For our driving tour of West Bromwich and Wednesbury music locations, we're starting here at the Archers pub, almost dead centre of the Yew Tree estate. The kind lady who was behind the bar at the time allowed me to film inside so I can show you where members of the band Judas Priest would drink when living on the estate. This guy drinking in the pub heard me mention Judas Priest and asked if Kenny Downing had died, meaning KK Downing, going on to tell me where KK lived on the estate, as he himself had lived next door to him. I thought this said Slade, but it said Blade. Now we're going to drive from here to some more Judas Priest locations on the estate. This is 2.5 miles south of Walsall Town Centre and 4 miles north of West Bromwich Town Centre, and argued over being West Bromwich or Walsall. I'll mention those two other towns because both have connections to Judas Priest. The reason I'm talking about distances is to show you how far we are from Birmingham, currently 8 miles away, as Birmingham is mostly listed as the origin of Judas Priest, which I've always found odd, as the majority of connections to the band geographically aren't in Birmingham. Bloxwich is another town with Judas Priest connections, and that's over 13 miles away from Birmingham, but we'll get to that on another video. Ian Frank Hill, Judas Priest bassist, founding member, and as of mid-2026 the only original member left in the band, lived and grew up on this estate from an early age with his family, attending school on the estate. At some point during his life, Ian lived in the Bermuda Mansions high-rise flat complex, which was built in 1957, 6 years after his birth. The complex existed until around 1991, when it was demolished due to the deterioration of the structure. Growing up here explains Ian's ties to the West Bromwich Albion Football Club, 5 miles away. Coming up in the distance is the housing block the guy in the pub told me KK Downing lived in, which would make sense in relation to where we're heading. In 1956, at age 5, former Judas Priest guitarist and founding member KK Downing moved onto this estate with his siblings and parents. Ian Hill and KK would have been living on this estate at the same time in 1957, both from around the age of 5 or 6 years old. As KK's birthday is the 27th of October 1951, he either began attending the Yew Tree Primary School sometime in 1956 when he moved onto the estate, or at the beginning of the school year in 1957, making it very possible that Ian Hill was at this school at the same time, and it's a school where they met. This is where I've just pulled into, which has always been the main entrance to the Yew Tree Primary School, which, according to records, had been here since 1900. This is the original area that the Yew Tree School stood on. There was and is a side entrance here. The main taller building stood in the area of the current car park. The original Yew Tree Primary School building on the estate was closed in August 2019 and was demolished over 2019 and 2020. If you use Google Maps Street View, you can see exactly what the buildings looked like back then. There are no records of KK or Ian Hill attending any other school on the estate, but there have been numerous mentions of them drinking in the Archers pub where we just came from, as well as another Judas Priest member. The other big Judas Priest tie to the estate is that a 22-year-old Rob Halford moved here in 1973. This was the first place that he lived after leaving his Bloxwich childhood home, and that's where we're heading now. Rob Halford is mentioned still living on the estate after the first North American Judas Priest tour, which took place in 1977. When I shot this video, I didn't know the exact address that Rob lived at during this time, only the street name, but after further research I managed to figure out from photos taken 45 years ago, for the first time ever, the house that he was living in. Not in Birmingham and not in Bloxwich. This block of flats here plays a role in one of the set of photos. This is the house. This photo by the front gate shows Rob holding a copy of Judas Priest's 5th studio album, Killing Machine, which was released in November 1978 in the UK. The photo is listed as being from the Birmingham Post and Mail archive, dated 23rd of July 1979. Paying attention to the brickwork and windows of the building, this photo in the back garden from another shoot shows the same brickwork and windows. This other set of photos were taken by Japanese photographer Wataru Asanuma, with KK Downing joining Rob at home. The only date listed for this shoot is the 1st of January 1978. Look at the plants in the window here. They are seen here in this photo of Rob and KK in the kitchen. Looking at the garden photo again, you can see the net curtains and some kind of ornament on the windowsill that can be seen in the living room. The clothes they're wearing in those previous two photos are the same ones they're wearing in this photo of them in the living room, often wrongly listed as being in Birmingham. Looking at the floral wallpaper and the rug, it is in the photos of Rob posing with the following Judas Priest albums: Rockarola, released 6th September 1974, Sad Wings of Destiny, released 26th March 1976, Sin After Sin, released 8th April 1977, and Stained Class, released 10th of February 1978. With Killing Machine released November 1978, these photos must have been taken before the front gate photo was. A third photo shoot took place at this address, this time with world-renowned photographer Ross Halfin in 1979. You can match up the window positions and how they're split, this air vent, and the size and the shape of the doorstep. Using the living room photo shoot as a reference again, the bookshelves and leopard skin blanket on the sofa show Rob's preparation for the shoot. There's the leopard skin blanket. These are the bookshelves. The shoot then headed out the front door for that iconic shot and others. This photo in the street is taken directly outside Rob's front gate. The grass verge and path form this triangle that can be seen still. What can also be seen is this bungalow in the foreground and two-storey buildings in the background of the photo, plus the Oak Court high-rise flats in the background I mentioned earlier. A couple of other photos were taken with journalist and founder of Kerrang! Magazine, Jeff Barton, in the street. Imagine what the neighbours were thinking in 1978. Walking directly from outside Rob's gate, you can see those other buildings I mentioned. And you can see that the multi-storey flat has had a couple of additions and a colour scheme change. Coming from directly outside Rob's house, a quote from his 2020 memoir, Confess, says, "Coming off tour can be such a come down. One minute you are wearing crowds, signing autographs and being interviewed on the radio. The next you are trudging to the corner shop and coming back to be told off by your housemates for forgetting the Rizzlers. Rizzlers are rolling papers for roll-up cigarettes." And it would make sense that the corner shop Rob mentions is this corner shop here, a couple of minutes walk from his home address that I found. Leaving the yew tree estate, 3.5 miles south is West Bromwich and the former maternity department of West Bromwich's former Hallam Hospital. With Ian Hill living that distance away, it's said that he was born here. What is for certain is that Thin Lizzy frontman Phil Lynott was born to his mother Philomena on the 20th of August 1949. With Phil having strong Irish connections, on the 23rd of August 2019, a green plaque was placed here to note this being his birthplace in what was his 70th birthday year. Sadly, his mother Philomena died 2 months prior to the unveiling at age 88. The plaque was crowdfunded by fans in a campaign led by retired journalist Sean Meaney, musician H from the Thin Lizzy tribute band Dizzy Lizzy, who had members attend the event, and Eddie Morton of the Stourbridge Foundation for Music. Together they form the Phil Lynott Convention, which holds annual memorial events for Phil Lynott. £8,500 was raised through the sale of memorabilia and donations to pay for the plaque. An event was held later that night in Birmingham to continue celebrations of the unveiling, with Dizzy Lizzy giving the headlining performance, as well as artists from all over the world coming to perform at the event. Led Zeppelin frontman Robert Plant was born at Hallam Hospital exactly 1 year prior to Phil Lynott on the 20th of August 1948. A mile away from Hallam Hospital is where Robert Plant apparently lived from birth. Details are a bit sketchy and an address has never been 100% confirmed, but an article ran in 2022 that displayed a picture of what is an address on Trinity Road North in West Bromwich. The legitimacy of that I'll leave up to you to decide. But this is the house that was shown as the image that ran in an article reporting this. Anybody with any further information, feel free to comment about this. If that is correct, I wonder if he attended this church with his family that I showed at the beginning of this part of the video. Now we're in part of the town centre of West Bromwich. Just under 2 years after having the green plaque attached to the former Hallam Street Hospital maternity department, a bust depicting Phil Lynott was placed on a plinth here to further commemorate his connection to the town of his birth. It was designed by local sculptor Luke Perry and crowdfunded by fans in a campaign led again by Sean Meaney in H of the Phil Lynott Convention memorial events. keep in mind the Catholic Church of St Michael and the Holy Angels. We're now heading up West Bromwich High Street towards another Judas Priest connection. K.K. Downing mentions in his autobiography, released in 2018, titled Heavy Duty, Days and Nights in Judas Priest, how his father would bring him and his sister to West Bromwich High Street, and due to the family's level of poverty, their father would encourage them to pick up any money coins that could be found lying on the floor on the high street here. Another connection to K.K. Downing's life is coming up on the left now, which is the West Bromwich Town Hall. You can see the spire of it in the distance. While attending secondary school, K.K. Downing entered a piece of art into a competition that took place here at the Town Hall. Also, further down the line, on September the 7th, 1972, Judas Priest performed here with K.K. Downing in the lineup. Lodge Road that runs along one side of the Town Hall is a street that KK lived on in 1973 around the age of 22 or 23, the same time that Rob Halford moved onto the Yew Tree estate that KK and Ian Hill had lived on where we started the video. He described the accommodation as a single room that was part of an old Victorian house that had been divided up into individual living spaces. These buildings are very old, so it's likely KK would have passed by here many times from a young age and into his 20s, going to the town hall or while on the high street with his father and while living on Lodge Road. Something else I discovered after shooting this video is that behind the town hall, where this car park is now, once stood a venue called the Gala Ballroom, where Eric Clapton and Muddy Waters performed on the 29th of November 1978. When Rob Halford was living 4 miles away on the Yew Tree estate. The building was demolished in the year 2000. The next location is the site of the Adelphi Ballroom. In this 1930s photo, the building in the background appeared to be the town hall, which would place just up the road a few buildings, known earlier as the Palais de Danse, where the Adelphi Ballroom stood, and often mixed up with the Gala Ballroom just mentioned, which stood behind the town hall. Walking up the road from the town hall, this would place the building here, in this space, which would make sense as it burnt down, so it would leave a big space where it stood. However, this is wrong, even if it does seem to perfectly match up. The spire on the town hall has different markings from the spire in the photo, and the actual spire is that of the Catholic Church of St Michael and the Holy Angels at the end of the High Street that I said to keep in mind earlier in this video. To further confirm this, I tried to find something else to match up and found a 2-pipe chimney which matches up, and then via Google Maps Street View from 2014 I found a 3-pipe chimney on the same building. To match up with the 2025 photo I took is slightly harder because of the trees that have grown and block the chimneys from view, but another indicator of the location is a church's sloped roof behind the spire. This is a building that has 2 and 3-pipe chimneys and is actually directly opposite the church. The Adelphi wasn't right next to that building, but a couple more buildings down, placing it about here. The reason I've gone into so much trouble locating the Adelphi Ballroom is because it hosted world famous artists including the Beatles, Pink Floyd, The Who, Genesis, Midland's own Slade, among many others. From 1962 to 1964, the band Denny Lane and the Diplomats held a weekly residence here. The band's drummer was Bev Bevan, who later played in The Move, Black Sabbath and ELO. Denny Lane himself joined the Moody Blues in 1964 and eventually joined Paul McCartney in Wings. The Adelphi Ballroom venue had a sprung dance floor and offered various forms of entertainment for people for almost 4 decades. But sadly, like the Gala Ballroom, on the 21st of May 1971, it also burned down. This is the drive from one end to the other, right through the centre of Hilltop. Hilltop is a small area of West Bromwich, 8 miles from Birmingham, again showing Judas Priest don't have origins in Birmingham. Some say Hilltop is in the Black Country, some say it is in the West Midlands, some say both. Hilltop is under a half-mile square in size, and it was here that KK Downing's parents were living with his father's mother, KK's grandmother, for a year and a half, after which KK was born. They had moved here when KK's older sister Margaret was born, but had to move out of the house again 6 months after KK's birth into the house of his other grandparent, KK's mother's mother. They returned to live here in Hilltop again after that. Living conditions were very cramped, with KK sharing a bed with his cousin Christine and sister Margaret. A shed-like structure was built down the garden as a sort of living room for some privacy for the family. Now we're heading 1.5 miles away to Wednesbury for a true route of Judas Priest, 10 miles from Birmingham. This is St James's Church, where a priest came to be known as Holy Joe preached. The church managed this building opposite, and Holy Joe would rent out rooms for bands to rehearse in. These bands included Slade and the first incarnation of Judas Priest with KK Downing and Ian Hill as members. The song Victim of Changes has roots from 1970 here as a combination of 2 songs by 2 Judas Priest singers, Whiskey Woman by Al Atkins and guitarist KK Downing, and Red Light Lady by later singer Rob Halford. The band called their tour through 1972 into 1973 the Whiskey Woman Tour. The song appeared on the band's second album, Sad Wings of Destiny, 6 years later after it began its origins here. It was one of the first songs written together under this lineup of Judas Priest. Dreamer Deceiver, found on the same album in 1976, also has roots here. Next came the songs Winter, Never Satisfied and Caviar and Meths, which all found their way onto their 1974 debut album, Rock-A-Roller, with Rob Halford joining in 1973 and recording the vocals. Holy Joe would take the money from renting the rooms and walk the short distance to the former Queen's Arms pub here on the corner. The band said that he was pretty much constantly drunk. It was in this pub in 1970 that after an audition, Ian Hill, KK Downing and Al Atkins came to discuss Al Atkins joining Ian and KK's band Freight. Here it was approved and Al Atkins brought along the name Judas Priest, giving birth to the band that from that point on we know as Judas Priest. Find all of these locations and more using Music Map, the most advanced music history app in the world right now. I'll leave a link in the description to this video. Also subscribe to the channel to make sure you see all of the upcoming videos. Thanks for watching.